I put out a poll at the end of 2019 to see who you guys wanted covered on Bell to Bell in 2020. Out of the 5 wrestlers I picked, Chris Jericho received about half of the over 32,000 votes. I'm pretty excited to be looking at Le Champion myself, so let's begin 2K20 with Y2J. Before he was a 9-time Intercontinental Champion, Jericho was a kid who grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, named Chris Irvine. His passion for wrestling came when he attended local wrestling events and became exposed to performers such as Owen Hart and Shawn Michaels. At the age of 19, Jericho began his training under the mentorship of the Hart brothers, and he had his first match in October of 1990. For the next 5 years, Chris Jericho would travel and perform across the globe in the US, Japan, and Mexico. Things picked up in the mid-90s when Y2J would debut in ECW. His time in the Land of Extreme ended up being pretty brief because WCW quickly took notice of Jericho and signed him in 1996. For the next 3 years, the King of the World began to leave his mark on the wrestling industry. While he was a multiple-time champion in WCW, probably Jericho's most memorable moment was his Man of 1004 Holds segment in 1998. But finally, in 1999, after leaving WCW and spending almost a decade wrestling just about everywhere else, Chris Jericho finally arrived in WWE. In the weeks before the future AEW World Champion made his debut, a clock would appear that read, "Countdown to the Millennium." The timer hit 0 on the August 9th, 1999 episode of Raw, while The Rock was in the ring. The arena went black, and after a blast of pyro, one of the greatest entrance themes of all time started playing, and there was Jericho, standing on the stage. Y2J stated he was here to save the WWE. The Rock responded back in his signature fashion before the segment came to an end. For the next couple of weeks, Chris Jericho would mostly appear backstage and attack other wrestlers. Eventually, though, the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla would have his first match in WWE, and it took place on the August 26, 1999 edition of SmackDown. The first person to the ring was Chris Jericho's opponent, the Road Dogg, Jesse James, who had been attacked by Y2J on Raw a while earlier. After the DOGG gave Jericho a signature DX gesture, the two wrestlers locked up. The King of the World knocked his opponent down with a shoulder block, but Road Dogg quickly responded with a monkey flip and a clothesline to the outside. New surroundings create new possibilities, and Jericho took advantage of them by shooting one half of the New Age Outlaws into the steel steps. Chris Jericho then put his cruiserweight background to use by going for the top rope. Y2J soon realized he had jumped the gun as Road Dogg knocked Jericho down and hit a superplex. Howard Finkel, whom Jericho had befriended, ran out with a drink in hand to help revive his buddy, but it mostly ended up in Road Dogg's face. It turned out to be a good distraction and allowed Jericho to get the upper hand. Y2J's opponent attempted to make a comeback, but a double-armed tilt-a-whirl backbreaker stopped those plans in their tracks. Fozzy's future lead vocalist then decided to bring out a table and set it up in the ring. Everything was going as planned, except that Road Dogg refused to go through the piece of furniture. After countering with a DDT, the DX member successfully made his comeback by hitting a series of his signature moves. Showing his resilience, Jericho kicked out of the DOGG's pin attempt and then powerbombed his opponent through the table, thus disqualifying him. Not content with that, Chris Jericho locked Jesse James in the walls of Jericho until the referees broke it up. A different way to end a debut match, but I think it still made Y2J look good. I also like that there was a bit of backstory for the match, rather than just throwing the two together. The contest itself was okay, but Chris Jericho would go on to have many more amazing matches. The first major feud for Jericho was with Chyna, and by December, he had beat her to win his first WWE title, the Intercontinental Championship. Y2J went on to win the belt another 2 times in 2000, while also competing against performers such as Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle, and Triple H. Things got even bigger for Jericho in 2001, as he became the first undisputed WWE champion when he beat The Rock and Stone Cold on the same night. He would hold the title until WrestleMania 18, when he was defeated by Triple H. Shortly after this, the original brand split began, and Y2J was drafted to SmackDown. His time on the Blue brand was brief, as he'd be moved to Raw in July of 2002, which ended up being a good decision. On the flagship show, Chris Jericho formed a tag team with fellow Canadian Christian, and they become the World Tag Team Champions. Like all great tag teams though, Jericho and Christian would eventually break up, and squared off at WrestleMania 20, with the latter coming out on top. Other notable moments in Chris Jericho's run on Raw included creating a WrestleMania Classic with Shawn Michaels in 2003, winning the Intercontinental Championship another 3 times, and feuding with Goldberg, among other moments. Towards the end of his first run in WWE, Jericho began competing for the world titles again, and his final rivalry before leaving would be with John Cena. After failing to beat Cena for the WWE Championship, the two faced off one more time in a You're Fired match on the August 22nd, 2005 episode of Raw. As you can probably guess, the leader of the C Nation came out on top again, and Y2J's time with WWE was over. But after a 2-year hiatus, Chris Jericho made his return in 2007. He would go on to have more amazing matches with Shawn Michaels, won a plethora of titles, and also reinvented his character by becoming a suit-wearing, low-voiced heel. Jericho's second run lasted a little less than 3 years, when he was taken off TV in 2010, after receiving a punt kick from Randy Orton. From here on, Jericho kept on returning and leaving every few years. While he accomplished a lot and had some fantastic matches, I think the moment that had the most impact was the List of Jericho. This also led to one of the best Raw segments in recent history, the Festival of Friendship. Speaking of which, shortly after losing the US title to Kevin Owens in 2017, Chris Jericho would once again disappear from WWE. He showed up at the 25th anniversary of Raw in early 2018, and his final match in the company would take place only 3 months later. On April 27, 2018, WWE began its controversial series of events in Saudi Arabia with the Greatest Royal Rumble. Fitting with the name of the show, the main event was a 50-man Royal Rumble match. Over an hour into the contest, and 6 competitors still remained in the ring. That was, until the 50th and final wrestler entered into the match, which of course was the living legend, Chris Jericho. He charged into the ring and immediately began brawling with his former best friend, Kevin Owens. After knocking down KO, Y2J kept the momentum going with a lion salt, a springboard dropkick, and codebreaker that allowed him to eliminate Shelton Benjamin. Owens tried to get his revenge, but the purple-clothed wrestler countered with the walls of Jericho. You can only stay on top for so long though, and Jericho's onslaught ended when Big Cass smashed his foot into the side of the Canadian's head. By the time Chris Jericho got back to his feet, Braun Strowman was on a rampage. Y2J attempted to get the drop on the Monster Among Men after Strowman eliminated Bobby Lashley, but Jericho's plan backfired and he was sent over the top rope and landed on the floor. It was a cool surprise having Jericho as the final entrant in the Rumble, and the brief square-off with Kevin Owens was good too. However, it is a pretty random way for the career of a legend like Jericho to come to an end, and it's unfortunate that the location overshadows all of that. While his WWE career has ended, for the time being, Jericho is still very much a part of wrestling. About a year after his last WWE match, Jericho would join the new kid on the block, All Elite Wrestling, and became their inaugural World Champion in 2019. Additionally, he's also been appearing in New Japan, and is still a part of Fozzy. It likely depends on how things in AEW turn out, but I think at the very least, we'll see Jericho inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. To change things up, tell me in the comments when was the first time you saw Chris Jericho. I think I first got exposed to him in 2010, but I'd consider his return in 2012 to be my first real experience watching Y2J. Make sure to leave your answer, and then check out the previous episode on Sin Cara. I'm Zach from Tap Out Corner, and that was Bell to Bell.